of my mind. I had heard variations on this rap many times before. I never bought them. And more than likely Arafat, the consummate actor, didn't buy them either. America was certainly not the main cause of his problems, let alone the source of his salvation. And Arafat, and anyone else who followed this issue seriously, knew it. Still, this 11th-hour appeal directed at the United States by a dying Arafat started me thinking again about the American role in Arab-Israeli negotiations and peacemaking. I had resigned from the Department of State almost 2 years earlier, having spent more than 2 decades under both Republican and Democratic administrations trying to help Arabs and Israelis negotiate an end to their conflict. I left government not because I had lost faith in the power of American diplomacy, but because the timeline for serious negotiations, let alone a settlement, seemed to have been pushed well into the future. By late 2004, everything we had hoped to achieve in Oslo and Camp David lay broken or bloodied somewhere. Now, I wondered whether I'd been wrong all those years, and what our legacy would be. In my blackest moments, I thought about the words of the British governor of Aden, who quipped that when Britannia fell beneath the waves, the British Empire would leave only 2 enduring monuments, the game of association football and the expression, "fuck off." Was this to be America's legacy in brokering Arab-Israeli peace? Was the conflict beyond resolution, the differences too great, and the hatreds too deep to be overcome even with American help? For better than half a century, American presidents, secretaries of state, and special envoys had wrestled with the same questions. And to what end? The promise of peace, harmony, and reconciliation in the Promised Land remains just that. The more I thought about it, the more it seemed that this land had been promised too many times to too many people. Those conflicting promises have haunted this troubled region for generations. I figured historic Palestine was promised 4 times at least to its inhabitants. First, by a Jewish, Christian, and Muslim God who offered an exclusive, even triumphal claim to the same land and its holy sites to those souls who were willing to follow. A second time by the British, who in an effort to protect an empire that stretched from Suez to India made conflicting commitments during the First World War to Zionists and to Arab nationalists. And third, by the United Nations General Assembly, whose 1947 partition resolution proposed splitting Palestine into an Arab and a Jewish state. But this book focuses on the 4th promise. That promise was made by America. I don't think we were cynical or duplicitous in making it, although perhaps we were naive. We didn't strike secret covenants or political deals with the Arabs or Israelis. But in its policies and pronouncements, America offered a more alluring prospect. A promise that, over time, through negotiation, dialogue, and compromise, the needs of Arabs and Israelis could be somehow reconciled, and that Americans could help deliver what God, the British, and the United Nations couldn't. The embodiment of the American promise was the passage in November 1967, largely through American diplomacy, of UN Security Council Resolution 242. It might have been a UN resolution, but for all practical purposes, it became the prime directive of American diplomacy. Its language was ambiguous, but its main message was clear. Land for peace was possible, but only through negotiations in which the United States and others pledged to assist. America's promise came with no guarantee. Indeed, it was made with the clear understanding that Arabs and Israelis must bear the primary responsibility for negotiating their future. At the same time, America maintained that it would stand with the parties ready to help, and that American pragmatism, idealism, and power could assist them in ending their conflict and securing a comprehensive and lasting peace. With very few exceptions, every major statement or speech made by an American president or Secretary of State on Arab-Israeli issues, from Richard Nixon through George W. Bush, contains a commitment to help the Arabs and Israelis negotiate their differences and reach peace. On the rhetorical level, that promise was regularly made. But as the Israeli Prime Minister, Levi Eshkol, reportedly said, "I made a promise. I didn't say I'd keep it." In practice, whether and how the American commitment played out was driven by various administrations' perceptions of their interests, the crises and opportunities of the moment, the personalities and preferences of America's leaders, and, of course, those of the Arabs and Israelis in the region. But one thing was clear.